So a very warm welcome to everyone tuned in to this extraordinary opportunity to come face to face and have a date with one of our country's literary giants. As the afternoon glow descends into a cool evening here in Patna, we can almost feel the cold winds in Mussoorie, where our honored guest
Sound is gone, Vaishnavi.
sit down and allow us a peek into his home and his thoughts. I am Sharon Galston, and it gives me inexpressible joy to have the privilege of welcoming our teachers, students, and parents to this very special, memorable moments with Ruskin Bond. St. Karen's, an Anglo-Indian institution in Patna, marks another red letter day with this fortune opportunity to interact with the loved and hugely respected Anglo-Indian author whose work has been acknowledged not only in India, but throughout the globe. I must confess, the thought of trying to find the appropriate words to introduce such a formidable personality did seem an onerous task. But relying on the greatness of his own words, I have tried and resorted to a slightly amateurish attempt at rhyme, which goes like this. So I'm just sharing my screen. He lived on a roof in a town called Dera. He writes stories for children and of people and nature. A gallery of rascals and friends in small places, all tell tales of colorful, unforgettable faces. The writer on the hill, as he's known far and wide, writes eerie, haunting ghost stories to send a chill up your spine. Then, tickling your funny bone with his crazy tales and wit, we meet Uncle Ken, grandfather, and many more in A Lamp is Lit. Memories of hills and dales, trees and animals are his inspiration. White mice, a flight of pigeons, and tigers forever, just a few to mention. Once you have lived with mountains, your life becomes gentle, heartwarming, compassionate sensitivity. Without a doubt, he's a man of metal. Numerous awards and accolades, the John Llewellyn Rhys Prize in 1957, stories becoming movies, The Blue Umbrella and Sat Khoon Maaf in 2011. Call him grandfather or uncle, it would not be kind to tell his age. Thought-provoking storytelling and charming words of wisdom make him a sage. Over hundreds of collections and anthologies, novels, fiction and nonfiction, essays and memories invoking nostalgia, I believe he's a man on a mission. Although writing books for a living is what he claims, we know his tips for life, happiness, and simple living is what we gain. So thank you, sir, for the beauty within the lines. This rhyme today, a small attempt of mine to prepare us all to smile a while and lend an ear to a voice we are privileged to hear of a legendary man we love to read year after year. And so now, to hear from the man himself, I will hand over the session to Miss Athiya from Ratnasagar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sharon, ma'am. I think we have one poem ready for our next book.
Yeah, but I was going to say, before we go any further, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I insist and beg you to please send it to me. Send me a copy.
Surely, sir.
Yes.
I shall put it on a frame over my desk to inspire.
Oh, lovely, sir. I'm honored. So
I'll get it
humble.
framed beautifully.
Thank you.
Include in our next English book. Sharon, that's a deal.
Thank you so much. I'm so humbled. Thank you.
And Athiya will put it in one of her Ratnasagar readers too.
Yes. To St. Karen's actually is doing really an incomparable service to education.
Yes.
In the state of Bihar. The wonderful education they impart, not only just the knowledge, but values and everything else. For that, I think they really are doing exemplary work there. as educationists, as should I say, a family which has brought up thousands and lakhs of children with lots of values as well as knowledge. I mean, huge, complete personalities he's made them. They've made them.
Wonderful.
So now that it's a school we are chain of schools we are talking about, maybe we can begin with schools. And if Mr. Bond, could you share some memories, a couple of memories of your school days?
Oh, my school days, mine. Well, that was, let's see, I finished school in 1950, so that's 70 years ago, plus a little. Schools were a bit different then. I went to a boarding school, a hill school in Simla, Bishop Cotton's, and it was a good school, but it was tough too. You know, in those days, let's say almost every activity, every game was compulsory, not just the field games like hockey and cricket and football, you know, but marathons and swimming and boxing. Until today, I've still got a broken tooth, a souvenir of my boxing, my boxing career, which never got very far. But and the dentist who attended me said, I look better with a broken tooth than with a complete tooth. So he left it broken and it's still there. So, but, and my other achievement and on the sports field, I think, was the marathon in which I came second last. I'm very proud of that. In time to be first in the next race instead, in fact. But to balance it out, we had a good library, lots of books, and I would often escape to the library and discover writers. So many of all the best-known writers of that period, the 1940s and 50s, and I began to write a little. So and we had one or two excellent teachers too, who helped me with my English and with my writing. So school days, I look back on them with mixed feelings sometimes, but there were friends too to be made and a lot of friendships. And all in all, I think I must feel grateful to Bishop Cotton, who'd started that school in the 1840s. And he had been a teacher at rugby, and in fact, he features in that book, Tom Brown's School Days. So when he tried to replicate rugby school on a hilltop in Simla, I think with varied results. So that's something anyway about school.
Yeah, I've studied in Patna for a couple of years. My father was posted there in another prestigious school called St. Joseph's Convent. And we hear that school was built on a battleground, the Battle of Buxar or some battle. So the borders were very, should I say, mischievous, and they used to scare the day scholars with stories of ghosts. So you would go, whenever we felt scared, we would run to the chapel. We'd go and sit there, and we'd excuse ourselves for going to the washroom. We'll go in twos and threes, never alone. But apparently, Mr. Bond, you love ghosts.
I don't say I love ghosts, but I get on with them fairly well. I mean, they don't scare me. And they don't scare my readers either. I think I had a little girl come up to me. She was about 9 or 10 years old. And she said, Mr. Bond, I like your ghost stories, but they're not scary enough. Can't you make them more frightening? So I said I'd try, but I don't know if I succeeded or not. But anyway, if kids enjoy the ghost stories, I don't want to scare them too much.
But you have that story about that watchman. You can tell us the gist of it with the lantern.
Oh, your face in the night. That's very well known. Yeah. But I must tell you a more recent experience.
That's
and I have yet to write about it. This not long ago, there's an old antique shop in Missouri. And I went in there and I found this beautiful old rocking chair. And I thought that'll suit me nicely, a rocking chair. So I bought it at a reasonable price and brought it home. And I was very comfortable in it. I had it in my bedroom. And then after a few nights, I woke up at midnight. I could hear the rocking chair creaking as it rocked to and fro. And I switched on my light, and there was this old lady, a crinkled and wrinkled old lady in the rocking chair, smiling and rocking away in it. Well, I dashed out of the room and woke up Bina too. I said, there's somebody in the rocking chair. And she came along, but by that time, the figure had vanished and it had gone. So this happened on 2 or 3 occasions. So I went to the shopkeeper who'd sold me this, the antique dealer, and I said, look, this chair's it's haunted. I keep seeing this old lady in it late at night. And he said, yes, I should have told you. It used to belong to this old Maharani who lived in Missouri. And she actually died in that rocking chair, So I said, thank you very much. Would you like to take it back? And he said, no, I don't want it back. So now I'm thinking of someone to give it to. So I don't know if you, Adair, or anyone at the school would like my rocking chair. Let me know and I'll pass it on along with the old lady who rocks in it late at night.
Abid, next time you go to Missouri, please bring it along.
All right, you can have it. It's a very nice rocking chair. But
Absolutely, ma'am. Absolutely, for sure.
So while we are on school, there's this great debate on learning a language as a mother tongue and as a second language.
Yes.
For us, English is a second language, and the way it should be taught. Initially, Macmillan and Oxford and those initial British publishers, they would import their books and teach us from those books. My grandfather's generation. But now many good publishers are preparing books which are meant to be taught to second language learners. Is there a great difference between learning English as a mother tongue and as a second language?
Well, when you say mother tongue, I think of someone who has learned English from a very young age, say from kindergarten or nursery. And so it may not be her mother tongue in the sense of their parents' language, but it's a language with which you become familiar right from the start, from the beginning. And then you're familiar with it. You can get used to the idioms and all the intricacies of the English language. And so I call that mother tongue. And I think what we call now second language is useful from a practical point of view, maybe getting a job or things that make life easier. But for someone who doesn't know English from the beginning, but if say you're going to be a writer, that won't do the second language. I think you need it you need that fluency, which only comes, I think, from growing up with the language and from reading in that language. After all, I think those who use the language best are those who've, from an early age, read books, literature, good books. And I think, I don't know if that's part of second language teaching or not. So I think the earlier you start using a language, whether it's English or any other language, the better you will be at it.
It almost becomes a mother language.
Yes,
you can say aunt language.
An adopted mother language.
Yeah. Because there's been this kind of a raging debate for the many years about phonics.
Now, I don't know anything about phonics. You mentioned it.
Phonics is, the pronunciation and stuff like that. It becomes difficult to teach it through books.
Oh.
Phonics is, and then the last 2 years, these lockdowns and the schools closed, it's become such a mess that online learning is, colleagues will share it. It's hats off to teachers. Pardon?
I guess, yes, it would be maybe very much a part of online learning.
Yeah. So online learning becomes even tougher. With books, it becomes very difficult. So you remember I sent you something called Reading Eggs, online learning program.
I haven't received that. Reading egg. I can boil an egg. I can scramble an egg. I can make a very soggy omelette, but I've
Yeah.
never read an egg. So you'll have to,
It's not reading, it's
you'll have
basically an
to
online
tell
program.
me
I
more
told you
about
about.
it or send it to me.
No, that online program where you'd learn maths and English through,
Yes.
it's like a hybrid thing, through reading and through online. So
I never
that,
could learn that.
yeah, it would be of great help. You had said that when I discussed it.
I hope it helps, but
Yeah.
I couldn't pass in maths offline, let alone online. So I don't know if it will.
So you must
it would
have this.
helped me.
This math seeds will help you pass it online also.
Well, I'll look it up anyway and see. And
Yeah. So at that time when we had discussed it, you had said it would be of help, because when learning online, I mean, the focus of the child is
well, I'm just beginning to talk online with these
yeah,
little
exactly.
events that we've been having.
And while we are still in childhood and memories of school days, you talk about a lot of your relatives. Even Sharon Mann mentioned about uncles and grandfathers, Uncle
Yes.
Ken. But apparently your grandmother was your most favorite,
Well, I wouldn't
or
say
most
favorite.
prominent in the books at least. She was the most
She was
prominent in
strict.
the books.
She was a strict lady. She was a dominating lady. Sort of old-fashioned Victorian kind of grandmother. And she would say little boys should talk only when they're spoken to. And if I was wicked that day, no second helpings at lunch or dinner.
Why?
And she had her own proverbs which she created, the sort of kitchen proverbs, I call them. I can remember 2 or 3. One was, a small fish is better than an empty dish.
That's a good one.
An angry man is a hungry man. What else? And if I was very wicked or eating too much, she'd say, Ruskin, don't let your tongue cut your throat. Don't let your tongue cut your throat. So she had these little proverbs too. But she was, of course, a strict exterior, but a soft interior. And she was good to me overall and kind.
No, that poem about her climbing a tree, is that a real one? Granny tree climbing.
The tree was grandfather planting the tree, and
No,
the animal.
Granny's tree climbing, that poem.
Oh, tree climbing. No, my grandmother would never have climbed a tree. She was a very dignified and very large lady. The first branch would have broken if she tried climbing a tree. she was very heavy and very big. So that's grandfather's tree climbing was of a bit of imagination on my part.
He loved animals, grandpa.
Yes, he did. He passed away when I was very small, but my mother used to tell me about the pets he kept, different animals and in the house, ranging from a mischievous monkey to a python and various other creatures.
Some of your most delightful stories, characters, Harold the Hornbill.
Yes, they've been very popular over the years. Those animal stories, the grandfather's private zoo, the pets he kept.
Harold the Hornbill is such a sweet one. Where the end you say, I hope there are a lot of balls in heaven for Harold to play with.
Harold the Hornbill, yes. And Henry the Chameleon.
And the cassowary bird.
Pardon?
The cassowary bird.
The cassowary bird. Yeah, the very bad-tempered bird. That's right. It scared everybody. It used to attack you. Yeah. Yes.
So you have been in Missouri since when? How many years?
Well, I was living in Delhi in the early 1960s, and then I felt I needed to live somewhere else in order to maybe write more and write better. So I came to live in Missouri in 1964. So that's over 50 years ago, isn't it? Although I'd seen it before that as a small boy, because my grandparents lived in Dehradun, so we would occasionally come up to Missouri. That was in the 1940s, a long, long time ago. Yeah, but school was in Shimla, and the first 6 years of my life was in Jamnagar, in Kathiawar, the Kathiawar
Gujarat.
state. My father ran a small school there for the palace children in Jamnagar.
Gujarat.
Yes, that's where I learned to read and write, in Jamnagar. It was a very small school with about 10, 15 children only. It was the palace children. In those days, they didn't send girls to schools, or not even day schools. At least not in the royal families. So they learnt at home.
So and then at 6 you moved. No, at what age do you move to Mussoorie? And you lived in Kasauli also?
Kasauli, I was born there. Yeah, but I was born in Kasauli, and my father had a connection with it because he had studied at Sanawa, the old military school. So when at that time, though, he was working in Alwar. There too, he had started a small school for the Alwar Raja, and it was a very hot summer, so he took my mother up to Kasauli to have me, and so that's where I was born. But we were there only a few months, and then we went to Jamnagar. But I don't know Kasauli very well. I've been there, but it's not a place I grew up in. I grew up in Dehradun, in Jamnagar, Dehradun, Simla, Delhi, New Delhi in the 40s with my father when he was in the RAF. During World War II, he served in the Air Force, in the Royal Air Force. And he was posted first in Delhi and then in Karachi and then in Kolkata. He passed away in Kolkata. And I spent 2 or 3 years with him, just he and I, in Delhi in the 1940s. So I remember Delhi from those years. It was just New Delhi, capital area, and Old Delhi, Shah Jahanabad. There was none of all the residential areas and colonies that you have today. Just New Delhi and Old Delhi.
So the east you've been, the farthest is Lucknow, not beyond. East.
Lucknow, my mother went to La Martiniers in Lucknow as a girl. She studied there. And I've paid the odd visit to Lucknow, but never for very long periods.
It's a very funny story of Uncle Ken going there to play a match.
Oh yeah, Uncle Ken. Well, a lot of uncles and aunts seem to live in Lucknow around that time. So there was constant connectivity between Lucknow and Dehradun, where Granny lived, and Ken was her only son, and she had 3 daughters, and the daughters grew up to have good marriages, and Uncle Ken decided he would sort of break up the year by spending 2 or 3 months with each of them, with each of his sisters, and never did any work.
Yeah. So you've been all over India.
But except Patna.
Yeah, except for Patna, yeah. That will go soon. We'll go soon.
By the way, my grandmother, not the Dehradun granny, but Calcutta grandmother, she was born in Motihari, which is Bihar. So I have a Bihar connection.
That's great. No, so over the past few years, the atmosphere in the country is a bit vitiated by some people as to who's Indian, who's not an Indian, what being an Indian is, who are the true Indians. So that beautiful passage of yours, which makes me cry every time I read it. So if we could end this conversation, if you could read that out for us, Mr. Bond.
Yeah, I've copied it out.
It's so wonderful. I get a lump in my throat when I
put in large print because my eyes have been troubling me a bit lately. So this is from an essay I wrote on being an Indian many years back, and you had included it in one of your readers.
Yeah. It's still there.
Yes. So many of my fellow Indians have been born and reborn here, and yet they think nothing of leaving the land. They will leave the mountains for the plains, the villages for the cities, their country for another country. And if other countries were a little more willing to open their doors, we would have no population problem. Mass emigration would have solved it. But it's more than the land that holds me. For India is more than a land. India is an atmosphere. Over thousands of years, the races and religions of the world have mingled here and produced that unique, indefinable phenomenon, the Indian. So terrifying in a crowd, so beautiful in himself or herself. Well, that was the end of the essay. Thank you.
That's so beautiful. And I think the children and the teachers are really eager to ask you some questions. So
Sure.
we'll end this little chat here, and I would request Seema ma'am to please take over from here. Seema ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Athya ma'am. And good evening once again, sir. It's indeed a privilege to be interacting with such a legendary person, sir. And this is the second time for me because I had the honor of meeting you personally when I had gone to Mussoorie way back 10 years ago. And you were sitting in this quaint bookshop, and we spent hours chatting with you. So I take back that memory, and it still stays deep in my heart. And whenever I think about it, you know, it's such a wonderful feeling. So I'm really honored, sir, today to be interacting with you.
Thank you.
And likewise, the students of our branches, across all the branches, they were eagerly waiting to interact with you, and they came up with so many questions. And we have selected a few, and I'm putting it across to you. My first question is from St. Karen's High School. You spent most of your childhood at the foothills of the Himalayas. What influence did it have on your writing, sir?
Oh, I should think it had a tremendous influence because growing up as I did in Simla and sometimes Mussoorie, one was very close to the forest, to the pine trees, the devdas, the flora of the Himalayas, you know, the sort of flowers and plants that you grow here, and also to the animals, to the wildlife that you get up in the hills, and to the people of the hills, who live in their villages, and all this accumulated, I think, and gave me a sympathetic and an empathy towards nature and to the mountains and to life in the mountains, and I became very much a part of the hill myself. So I think it was all important, and it became even more so when I came to live in the hills back in the 1960s, after a period of a few years in Delhi and London and elsewhere. So it was good to come back to the mountains and settle here permanently.
Right. So, sir, my next question is by a student, Harshita Kumari of 8G, and it is towards those last lines which you read a little while ago. Right. In a great work of yours, you wrote a line that intrigued me. I might not be a typical son of the soil, but that doesn't make me less of an Indian. What does this sentence mean to you? What is it about India which kept you rooted in it?
Yes. Well, when I said may not be a typical son of the soil, it means perhaps unlike most Indians who've grown up in rural areas, basically, and in villages, over the years we are becoming more and more an urban society, but originally it's almost entirely rural. And since I'm the great grandson of people from another country who came and settled here, so in a way I've acquired, I've become, if not a son of the soil, a lover of the soil, or if you can put it that way.
Yes.
So I think it's since my presence here goes back at least 3 generations. I think that's, in fact, more than many Indians can boast of, because so many, in fact, come from other parts and other countries and become Indians too.
Right, sir. One of our teachers, Dr. Deblina Mukherjee, would like to know, I have been reading your stories since I was in school. I still love to read and teach your writings as a teacher. My question to you is, how do you charm the age group of 8 and 80 equally?
By not trying to do it, by making I don't make any effort to differentiate between 8 and 80, because now that I'm in my 80s, I suddenly realize there's not much difference between being 80 and 8. So when I wrote over the years, whenever I've written a story, I've just written it because I liked the story, or because I wanted to write about the people in it or characters. And so sometimes kids enjoyed it, sometimes older people enjoyed it. And in fact, it was only when I've been writing since the age of 17, 18, but it was only when I was in my 40s that I actually started writing some stories aimed more or less at the child reader, trying to make them from the point of vocabulary and in the general interest. I mean, the characters would be children too, the main characters, and try to tell an interesting or exciting story specifically for children. Otherwise, over the years, I've just written for anybody, and primarily for myself, because I get so much pleasure out of writing usually, that I'm in a way just doing it for myself. And if it gives pleasure to others, that's a bonus.
It sure does. Thank you, sir. And my next question is from Mansi Ojha of 9H. Have you ever Googled yourself? Do you feel the information shared there is accurate, or Ruskin Bond is somebody we do not know yet?
Wonderful.
Oh, do I know myself?
No, this is about the information about you on the Google, because for everything.
Well,
yes.
Sometimes, you get the odd mistake. I mean, I was a couple of years looking at that Wikipedia page, and it said that my father came to India as a young man, which is wrong. He was born in India. And then it said that that early film of mine, Junoon, which was based on a story, A Flight of Pigeons, was directed by, I forget who, but the actual director is Shyam Benegal. But they mentioned somebody quite different. So you get a lot of factual errors in some of the information that comes out on the internet very often.
The story is credited to Ismat Choktai, actually.
Pardon?
The story is credited to Ismat Choktai. That was the error.
Yes.
Ismat Choktai story. Yeah.
So you get these errors, but it doesn't matter really. I try, occasionally I correct them or try to. But as long as they don't mix me up with James Bond or someone, it's all right. or the lady who met me in a club, in a club, and she'd had a couple too many gins too many, and she said, "Oh yes, you're that well-known writer, Bunskin Rond, aren't you?" So my friends who were with me were calling me Bunskin after that.
Please tell us that
the name sometimes gets.
Brooke Shields proposed to you. Why didn't you marry her, Brooke Shields?
So that she becomes Mrs. Bunskin.
No, you said a Brooke Bond.
Huh? Oh, Brooke Bond. Oh, you want? I know my Atiya is thinking of that old joke about who was the actress?
Brooke Shields, sir.
Brooke Shields.
Even she's been forgotten now. The joke about Brooke Shields wouldn't marry me because she didn't want to be called Brooke Bond. But Brooke Bond was, I don't know if I can claim any relationship with Mr. Book, who partnered Mr. Bond back in the 1850s or so, and gave us all that tea. But my father did work in tea estates, yes. At one
So
time.
my next question is from a student of St. Karen's Secondary School, Akshat Kaushik of Standard 11E. You are often called as the Indian Wordsworth. What is your take on this?
Well, you know, I didn't like studying Wordsworth at school. La Belle Dame Sans Merci and all that. I preferred other poets, come to think of it. I liked Walter de la Mare very much, and his poems, and John Clare, and John Masefield too, his Poems of the Sea, these poets. So Wordsworth was sort of limited to the Lake District, and it was a great nature poet, no doubt, but I don't mind. I'm certainly flattered to be compared to him.
All right.
But there were many poets who I preferred. Let's put it that way.
One of the students of St. Karen's Collegiate School, Ehtisham Salim of Standard 80, would like to know, did you ever have a child as your critique? How do you take criticism?
Did I have a criticism?
Child as your critique? And how do you take criticism?
Well, a writer must take criticism. It will come from time to time, and he shouldn't be too bothered by it. As a child, if anybody, teachers were there to pull you up if you made a mistake, either in your work or in your behavior, well and good. And little criticism is good for you. And over the years, I've been lucky in that I've not had any negative criticism. But if somebody would, say, analyze a story or book of mine and point out a few my weaknesses, maybe, in plot or characterization, I would take it seriously and just try to do better. After all, we can't be perfect, but we can aim for perfection. We can always try to do better in our work and in our writing or whatever we do. So aim for perfection, even if you know you can't be perfect.
Bond sir, I just want to share on this, Seema ma'am, if you allow, on this question itself. We just met Mr. Bond 3 weeks back at his home, and my daughter asked him a question. Sir, I read my mother's Ruskin Bond book. These were her words. And she was asking, I find it very difficult because you write very tough phonics. So Mr. Bond gave me the answer.
I try to be simple as I don't look for words which are difficult or even easy. I try to be exact.
No, it's very simple. Your language flows.
Sir also said that I have the same problem. Sir said that I have the same problem of reading hard phonics. So this is how he took a little criticism from my daughter personally.
You see, then you probably had English as a second language, maybe. Did you? Or did you study it right from class 1?
And the next one?
Yes. Our next question is from Shubhra Nishant Singh, who's a teacher. You have created numerous characters for your stories and novels. Which one can you call your alter ego?
So hard to answer that. I can't think of any particular. Well, so many of my stories featured my alter ego, Rusty. So Rusty was, in a way, myself having imaginary encounters or experiences. And then grandfather and granny and Uncle Ken, they've been popular characters, and I enjoyed writing about them. And nature itself is my favorite character. Nature, the world around me, the forests, the mountains, the trees, the flowers, the animals, the insects, the birds. These are all my favorite characters.
Right, sir.
Yes.
Now, there's a question from St. Karen's Primary School.
Mhm.
How do you select the name of your characters?
Oh, well, just casually. Sometimes I base a character on someone I've known, but then I would usually change the name because that person may not enjoy being written about or portrayed. So I would change the character a bit and change the name, but I would normally use, I just take them out of a hat. No particular method or in choosing them. And they're not, unlike Charles Dickens, who used sort of very comical names sometimes for his characters. Mine are pretty ordinary.
Right, sir. Now, Apurva Shri of Standard 6A would like to know, if you weren't a writer, then what would you have been?
Oh, well, when I was at school, and I was quite good at football, and I used to have ambitions to be a football player. But today, at the age of 80, I'm still writing stories, but I'm not going to run after a football or kick it very far. So I think by becoming a writer was a better choice. What else did I want to be? I wanted to be a tap dancer. But now I don't have the figure for tap dancing. So, so I think, again, writing was probably the best choice, because you can write when you're young, you can write when you're old, you can write in bed, you can write while standing on your head. So there's nothing to stop you writing, provided your brain is still functioning.
Right. But did you tap dance during your heydays, sir? I'm
Oh
sure
yeah,
you
I used to imitate dancers like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. They were, great dancers in musicals. I can't do Bharatanatyam or Kathakali or anything like that. That would have been a little too difficult. You need training for that.
Yes. Right. My next question to you would be from St. Karen's Montessori School. That's a teacher asking, how can I inspire my students to read good stories? How can I inculcate reading habits in my students? And there's a third part to it. How important is reading storybooks to children at bedtime in this digital era?
Well, reading to them at bedtime is what helps them to become readers in a way. And it is difficult to inculcate the reading habit in children if they've, say, grown up on movies or television, or today on technology of various sorts. But I meet still so many young people, children, boys and girls who do read, who like books, who love reading. They are a minority. But then, as I've always said, readers have always been a minority. 70 years ago, when I was at school, in a class of, say, 30 boys, it was a boys' school, there were just two of us, I can recall, who actually loved reading books and who used the library regularly. And in those days, there was no television, there was no internet, there was none of the things that are distractions today. But still, readers were a very small minority. And the only other entertainments we had were going to the cinema, to the pictures, or the radio. But even then, there were very few readers. And today, even today, although there are very few readers, but in terms of actual numbers, because of the spread of education and the large number of people who can read and do read in English and other languages, so the actual numbers of people who read have gone into hundreds of thousands, even the minority. 50 years ago or 40 years ago, nobody was buying my books. I couldn't make a living out of writing books or having them published. And today they're selling in hundreds of thousands. So somebody must be reading them. or at least buying them and looking at them.
So my next question to you would be, at our age, we have a lot of opportunities for our future, as well as a lot of confusion regarding which profession to choose. Did you have the same feeling at your time? What would you
That's a very,
suggest to us to
very,
tackle such a feeling?
very interesting question. Very interesting, because you only had a few, say when you finished school then in the say 1950, there were very few channels or, openings for young men. You could study on for engineering or being a doctor, but you didn't have this wide range of career possibilities that you have today. So you were very limited then. And in fact, when I came back from school, having finished school, and my mother said, Ruskin, well, what are you going to do with yourself now? And I said, Mom, I'm going to be a writer. And she said, don't be silly, go and join the army. She wanted me to go into the army because the army was #1 choice for boys, out of school then. Most kids opted for the army, and that's rare nowadays. There'll be 20 other choices before they're going to say, I'll join the army. And they usually join the army because their dad is in the army. But, the army is, of course, a great choice and a great career. But now there's so much to choose from. The only difference is, the thing is that there's also much more competition now, isn't there?
Yes.
So young people have to work harder in a way, and school children get certainly more homework than we used to get, and a wider range of subjects and a wider curriculum too. So the opportunities are there, but the competition is there too, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's not easy.
Seema ma'am, could we have just one more question?
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Bond is not feeling too well. Yeah. He's got a
All
message
right.
from Manson. Yeah.
All right. So this is the last question to you. In this world of digitization, do you still prefer writing your manuscripts with the pen, or have you also adopted digitization?
I am technologically illiterate, so I have to keep writing with a pen. And in any case, I'm comfortable with my ballpoint pen and a pad, and I can relax in any chair or in my bed or on the floor or under a tree and write a poem with my pen and writing pad. So I'm used to that. And my handwriting isn't bad, so my publishers don't complain. And they'll send me a printout for correction, and that'll be full of mistakes, of course, having gone through a machine. So I write by hand, and it doesn't, and I'm still writing well. It doesn't wobble yet, my handwriting, because sometimes when you get older, the hand starts wobbling a bit.
Yes.
But so if I can't write by hand anymore, then what will I do? Dictate? No, I don't like dictating. It's not much fun. I'll have to start learning to use one of these computers, and sad.
So thank you so much, sir. It was indeed a pleasure interacting.
Thank
And
you
we
so much.
carry back
I hope
a
you
lot of
come
wonderful.
again to Missouri. For 2 years, I haven't been to that Cambridge Book Depot, partly because of the lockdown and the
Right.
restrictions,
Right,
and also
sir.
because I get tired now going there. But otherwise, hope we meet again. Thank you.
And we hope to see you soon. And
Yes,
I hope you make a visit down to Patna, sir.
I'll
We would
come
love
down
to
there.
have you. Yeah.
We'll see to that.
Yes,
Shefali
you'll have to.
ma'am,
I don't
Thank you
like
so much.
trains anymore, but you'll have to put me in a train now and take me down. That'll take about 2.5 days, I suppose.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you all so much. Great.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh,
Good
yes.
evening, everyone. Good evening, sir. So it's a matter of pride and privilege for all of us to be part of this wonderful conversation. I, on behalf of all the students, staff members, and the management of Sanketan School, I extend a heartfelt thank to you for spending time with us and enlightening us with your valuable thoughts and perspectives. Today, I feel each and every listener would have become enriched by your enlightening words and thoughts, and the love for the story, but must have increased manifold for many of them. Many of our students, sir, I feel they nurture the dream of becoming a writer. And today's session, I feel, would have definitely given them an impetus to realize their dreams, and they might become a future writer. Thank you, sir, for bringing this dream
Good luck
true
to all
for
you.
them.
Thank you
you,
so
sir.
much. All the best.
I
Good
would
luck.
like to especially thank Atya ma'am for this organizing, and the team at the Ratna Sagar for organizing this wonderful chat
Pleasure,
show
ma'am.
conversation. So, ma'am, we definitely want many more such sessions. Please keep
Definitely.
doing this
Sure,
more
sure.
often.
Definitely.
A big thank you to all the parents who have joined us and who have encouraged their ward to be a part of this conversation. And I'm definitely that all the students must have been enlightened with this wonderful conversation. And all of them must have taken a point, or must have thought of reading, inculcating habit of reading hereafter so much. Thanks to all the technical support who have helped us in conducting and organizing this show. Thanks to all. Thank you very much. We are so much happy. And once more, Atya ma'am, we want this show again to happen again and again. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All the
Ma'am,
best.
Sharon ma'am wanted to share some sketches made by the students of Ruskin Bond, sir. So I'll be sharing them at the end now. So for the tributes from the students to you.
That's it.
So this is from Usman Shoaibi of a Standard 5 from St. Karen's Collegiate School.
Very good.
Yeah, it's quite a good likeness, isn't it, sir?
Yes, certainly it is.
The next is Akansha Anand from 6E of St. Karen's Secondary School.
Yes, that's a very good one too.
Yeah, and this is from Kritanya Pandey, who's a 11th standard student from St. Karen's Secondary School.
Yes.
You do look quite handsome in the tie, sir.
But they've all made me more handsome than I am.
That's true. No, sir, you are definitely. And this is a lovely color one by
Nice.
Sarthak Singh Sagar
Yes,
from
thank you so
Standard
much.
11F in St. Karen's High
so
School.
Very great.
So you've inspired them, sir, to take up their wonderful.
I'm inspiring artists as well as writers, because
That's right.
also, yes, because after all, a good book, especially for children, must have good illustrations.
That's right,
and that's
sir.
very important. Thank you.
So
Thank you very much, sir, for this little interaction with us.
Thank you.
We hope to see you soon, and I'm taking you up on it, Atya. You did say you'll see to it, so we are taking you up on that.
And Sharon, you can send these sketches to us. I'll try and get them autographed by Mr.
Surely,
Bond.
surely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mr. Bond can take your evening tea.
I might put a nice one in a frame.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you. We'll meet soon.
Thank you.
So
Everyone will just take everyone's
so
leave.
what I was saying, Sharon, any questions which are unanswered, Seema ma'am, you can send them to me.
There are a whole lot of them, ma'am.
Yeah, over the month or something, he will get answers to them, and also his sketches will get them personally autographed by him. So,
Right. Thank you so much for giving us this wonderful opportunity. And I'm sure the children.
Friend of Ratna Sagar, our best friend in the whole of North India.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time. I'm sure everybody has enjoyed it as well. So looking forward to speaking to you soon, and let's hope things get better for all of us. And, very soon we can have more events like this organized. Right? So thank you. Shall we leave? Can we end? Is it
Yes,
off?
ma'am.
We can close the meeting.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Abid, and thank you, Mr. Manoj and Mr. Sahil. I think he must be somewhere. And
He's managing Facebook, ma'am. He's managing Facebook page.
Taking questions from there.
Thank you, Sharon ma'am. I'm here.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Atya ma'am, Seema ma'am, Sharon
Thank you
ma'am.
so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
More
Bye,
party.
everybody.
More
Bye-bye.
party St.
Bye-bye.
Karen's.
Bye.
3 cheers for St. Karen's.
Thank you.
Same
yeah.
goes for Ratnasagar too, ma'am.
Yeah.
Well, Amit, you can close it.
Bye,
Stay
ma'am. Bye.
safe, stay safe, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Have a happy next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Abid, close कर दो. साहिल, क्लोज कर दिया.